Hey everybody, Casey here with Life Abstract Gaming, and the Electronic Entertainment Expo, better known as E3, was last week. Let's talk about it. Just in case anybody isn't aware of what E3 is, it's both a conference and convention that was previously exclusive to members of the gaming industry, as well as the press. It's where game companies tend to announce brand new IP and big name sequels, as well as new hardware. This year's E3 is the first to actually allow the general public to buy tickets and get access to the show floor for the convention portion, but they would still need special access to any of the publisher conferences. And the conferences are where the magic happens. Historically, the conferences are big keynote presentations from each console manufacturer and a small number of third-party publishers. The presenters change around every so often, but this year we'll see Electronic Arts, Microsoft, Bethesda, Ubisoft, Sony, and finally Nintendo, with the pre-recorded presentation they call a Nintendo Spotlight. I don't intend to go through every single E3 announcement by each company or even the ones I care about most. There's just way too much information. Believe me, I wrote a 5-page draft and still wasn't finished. So instead, I'm going to detail what I think the goals for each company should have been going into E3 and how close each of them came to fulfilling those goals. Starting with EA, what I think EA needed to do this E3 was wash the taste of Mass Effect Andromeda out of our mouths. Andromeda wasn't a train wreck of a game by any means, but it just didn't live up to the legacy left behind by its previous titles, and that was extremely damaging. EA even stated they were shelving the franchise for a while. They also needed to figure out a way to widen the appeal of their sports franchises, which are always solid entries with solid sales, but in terms of general buzz, year to year, they have completely stagnated. With this in mind, EA really succeeded. They let their past success do the talking over past failure with a good showing of Need for Speed Payback and a heavy focus on their latest EA original title, A Way Out, and Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is adding a highly requested single-player campaign. The addition of story modes to Madden and the continuation of the mode in FIFA is telling me that they intend to keep this trend going. A narrative in a sports game is a great way to get lapsed players to come back to the game that hasn't had anything really new to offer for several years. The slightly surprising reemergence of the long-dormant NBA Live brand didn't wow as much as I think they wanted. That title has had a very troubled past, but maybe they thought enough time has gone by and players would welcome it. But not really keeping with the plan to avoid reminding us of Mass Effect Andromeda, their brand new sci-fi IP from BioWare, Anthem, was teased to be showing up later during Microsoft's conference. They might have been better off just leaving it out altogether. What Microsoft needed to do was sell us on why we need an Xbox One X. And they needed to do that quickly so that they could get right to the games and let the world know that they are home to noteworthy exclusive titles too. Microsoft has definitely done well to make up ground since their initial launch of the Xbox One, but Sony has consistently been outpacing them in sales, consumer mindshare, and in quality exclusive games. Everything about Microsoft Conference should have been about convincing us that they can match with or top Sony. And frankly, they failed. Xbox One X didn't look particularly special, just a smaller, grayer Xbox, and despite how much more powerful it is, a $500 sticker price still feels steep. And that's not counting getting a 4K TV at some point if you don't already have one. Otherwise, you're not making full use of the new machine. In the games department, Microsoft touted over 20 exclusive titles, but only about 2 or 3 of them were particularly noteworthy. And even those games wouldn't be comparable to the scale and scope of what Sony has in its stable. What they needed was AAA. But they paraded out lots of single and AA games, and it just doesn't match up. The best looking games they presented were from third parties like Assassin's Creed Origins and the EA game Anthem. So it's like Microsoft is banking on people choosing to play the third party titles where they'll look best. But I have doubts people will pay $500 more for just that. I mean, I wouldn't. 2017 for Bethesda marks their third ever E3 conference. Coming off of the last 2 years being very well received, they needed to cement their place as a big name publisher with the clout and library to keep showing up at E3. They followed roughly the same formula from their last showings, but wrapped it in an overarching theme called Bethesda Land, where each game franchise was supposed to represent areas of a large theme park. They even went so far as to build an actual theme park near the convention center, but regarding just their stage presentation, they were fairly average. The games they showed were all sequels to previous games or VR versions of past titles. While the sequels Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus and The Evil Within 2 admittedly looked amazing, they were expected to show up, so they lacked the real wow factor. Ubisoft has been releasing so many games, it's like no matter what issues any one game comes across, they have 3 more that are doing fine to cover it up. They have managed to be one of the most cringeworthy and surprising presenters all in the same show. But this year, all they needed to do was make their returning Assassin's Creed franchise look worthwhile and give us more of any other IP they haven't released in a while. Ubisoft managed to completely hit their goal. Not only did Assassin's Creed have a good showing, but they announced 2 new IP. One of them being a Nintendo Switch exclusive that nobody asked for, but it still looks to have some merit. Then Ubisoft, like clockwork, blew the collective minds of the audience with the trailer for Beyond Good and Evil 2. There was no gameplay, but the cinematic was amazing, and it definitely energized cult fans of the franchise who have been waiting over 13 years at this point for more. Sony, which is far out ahead of its competition, which is Microsoft, only really needed to reassure fans that the games they showed 1 or 2 E3s ago are going to be done soon. They would also need to push their PlayStation VR hardware by showing awesome games available for it, and just refrain from shooting themselves in the foot with any crazy announcements that seem counter to any fan expectations. In that regard, Sony managed to largely succeed. They didn't have much of anything brand new to show off, but they touted their high-quality exclusive games in long trailer after long trailer. God of War and Spider-Man were especially great looking. But the Sony Ben game, Days Gone, doesn't differentiate itself much from Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. So I really don't find it interesting, but maybe that's just me. They may have missed the mark slightly with some of the VR games they showed. I really don't think anybody's looking forward to Final Fantasy XV's fishing game, but it was a small hiccup in a largely safe and crowd-pleasing presentation. Nintendo has been on an upswing after releasing new hardware and possibly the best game ever made in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But without that game, the Switch library is still pretty much a wasteland. Nintendo needed to make the case that the Switch will have a decent library made up of quality games from not just Nintendo, but other third parties. Nintendo managed to do pretty well getting that message across. Super Mario Odyssey looks amazing, and is definitely going to move people towards getting a Switch along with Zelda DLC and ports of high-profile games like Rocket League and FIFA 18. Nintendo also threw teasers out for Metroid Prime 4, actually just a logo, but they didn't even give that much when they announced that a new Pokemon RPG is in the works for the console. Both of those announcements are massive, but the fact that there's nothing concrete to see makes them just a little disappointing at the same time. At least they remade Metroid 2 for 3DS with Metroid Samus Returns, which wasn't expected at all and might hold fans over until Prime has more to show. Overall, this year's E3 really lacked the kind of shock you love the conferences for. Most of the companies did just fine, and the ones that didn't weren't so bad that it became the talk of the show itself. Still, even without internet-breaking announcements, there was a ton to be excited for, so if you're like me, you've got a bunch of games in your back catalog you need to get through in anticipation for what's coming. So, what news got you the most hyped from E3? Was there anything that disappointed you? If you were running any of these conferences, what would you have done different? Let us know. We're listening.